Day converted man here. I've got Rev Kev, who I asked, how do I talk to Rev Kev? And I figured it out. So here he is. Hello, Rev Kev, or Kevin. Welcome.
Greetings.
Thank you for joining me. Well, I found a video of yours. I responded to it. I poked you in the comments, and somehow amidst all that jaded, skeptical grumbling that I did, I managed to talk to you anyway. So thank you for putting up with that.
Well, I didn't see your video,
Oh,
so
okay. Well, there you go. You didn't see how terrible I was to you. No,
yeah.
my simple comment that's an easy fix on your side would be to turn the music way down or maybe even off, because it just I could not hear a word you were saying hardly. So that's
Interesting.
a critical feedback. And then the sort of broad feedback on that particular video, how do I talk to an atheist, was the kind of message is like, okay, you're talking to hypothetically other Christians and telling them how to talk to an atheist, just like anyone else. I mean, there's nothing special about it, but you're kind of saying like, well, how to preach to, or how to like share the message with. And it's like, well, be their friend and all that. And I'm like, yeah, but you've got this kind of like hidden agenda, and I was like, just be their friend if you want to be their friend. That was kind of my response, was not to try to convert everybody or to preach at everybody. I know that there's a Bible verse that's like you're supposed to, spread the gospel or what have you. But it seems that might be friends with somebody just to spring it on them. By the way, have you heard of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? It's like, okay, that's why you became my friend. Could lead to real problems. So that was kind of my general thoughts on that. Do you have any pushback against any
Well,
of that, or?
yeah, a couple things. Well, as a Christian, we feel like we have a relationship with God, and we want everybody to have that. And we also believe we were created to have that. So, I mean, let's just say there were stacks of $1 million, and we could go get one, and we turn to our poor neighbors. We're gonna want to tell them about it. With that, we feel like that will help them.
Yeah.
And actually, it's not just Christians pin Gillette. I don't, on one of my comments or one of my responses on the channel, people made comments. He is an atheist, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, if you really believe that somebody can spend an eternity with God or separated from God, you should be telling people about that.
Right. No,
So,
yeah, I think it's just all about the approach of you know like, I'm gonna make this friend with somebody just so that later I can kind of say, oh, and by the way, I'm a Christian,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
kind of like,
I
I don't think that's it's like that's gonna lead to a broken friendship, because it's like, oh, that's why you became my friend, just to tell me about this thing. Um, and then most atheists, or maybe just ask, why are you an atheist? That might be a decent starting point. It's just, like I said, just talk to people like you would any other, not to, like, my motive is not to deconvert people, not that I could if I wanted to. Um, my motive isn't to try to, if anything, I want people to learn informal logic, but the way I'm going about that is extraordinarily bizarre and makes no sense. So so it's not why I try to get to know people. I'm just generally curious about why people believe what they believe, and and sharing my epistemology with them and all that. uh I think that's a far better approach to this sort of, you know interaction with the theist and non-theist, or other, or theist to some other theist that doesn't necessarily believe in their version of theism. It's just to get to know each other. And So anyways, so it's an interesting kind of almost a meta discussion of how ought we have the discussion in the first place. um
And just to clarify one thing, though, again, I feel like back to the $1 million thing. If I
mm,
could get $1 million
yeah, go
to
ahead.
share
Yeah,
that with
that's all
someone
right.
else, I certainly want to share that with others, but that is not the one and only reason, and that's not the whole focus of my friendship with others. My focus is to be a friend. So, yeah, I would just clarify that. I'm not going out and looking, oh, there's one of those and one of those, and
Oh
I'll
yeah,
meet
yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah. Right.
I do have atheist and non-Christian friends, and they're still my friends, and we still can talk and wrestle with the truth. What is the truth?
Yeah.
How do we find
Th-
that? So,
Yeah, that is a good question. That is kind of, well, a big part of what I do to some extent. Um, so you say Rev Kev, are you a reverend, or is that just kind of a moniker?
all three. Oh, that was only two. I can't count very well. Um, I went through the process because there was with our church. I was one on the leadership team, or one of what they called the elders, and I went through a process of screening and get my theology right. Only recently, during COVID, did I actually play a role in starting a church. So I guess that's the time where the Rev would actually be used. But they don't call me Rev Kev; they call me Kevin.
Okay.
Uh,
And what denomination is that?
there was no denomination in that. That was this. I don't know if they would call it non-denominational. We're not afraid of a denomination, but we just didn't find any reason. A lot of denominations are networks, and we just
Mm,
started as a group of friends, and
okay.
didn't find one to come alongside us or
So
network with.
are you actually actively preaching besides doing just YouTube?
I I was. I'm about to move, so I stepped
Okay.
out of my role in the little church of 20 people, and
Hey, it's something. That's a pretty good crowd. I mean, that's a lot of people listening to what you have to say. Um,
yeah, and I actually you would have enjoyed it because the sermons were fairly short. Uh, well, we attempted to do them about 20 to 25 minutes. Sometimes I would talk a little longer, but we would then ask pointed questions to the audience, and the
mm,
attempt is to engage their mind.
mm,
What do we do with this?
mm,
How do we live this out? So it wasn't just one person saying, "Hey, I have all this knowledge. You need to learn." Part of my point was, you have access to this knowledge. I'll
yeah,
study a little bit and share. So
yeah. The way churches run and all that is almost very standardized in a way. I've been to many different denominations of Christianity. I've never been to a different religion yet. I suppose I could go, but it's just they're kind of boring. Just like, yeah, I'm
yeah,
just like, yeah, I'll just be bored. Why subject myself that to that? It's like, oh, we're gonna sing, we're gonna stand up, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna stand up, sit down, and sing, and then we're gonna say something, and we're gonna stand up, sit down a few more times, and then the person's gonna say stuff. All right, they're gonna do some sort of ceremony, whatever. They're gonna call for people to come to the front. All right, and then we have to shake each other's hands, whatever. Okay, can we get out now? We're done. Great. Is there snacks? Good, fine. That's all I cared about. Give me food. You know, get out of there, right?
yeah,
And as soon as it's done, everybody's like, poof, gone. So that's kind of the standardized format in a way. Maybe a little bit exaggerated, but it's kind of what I've seen is
yeah. And we
that sort of.
attempted to get away from that. Let's talk about it, and then when it's over, a lot of times people remembered the discussion afterwards if somebody shared what they were wrestling with. And I'd say, man, I put all this work into this sermon, and people remember the discussion far more than what I wrote.
Yeah,
And I said, that's
yeah,
great. I said,
yeah.
we're all
That
in
is.
this together.
Yeah. Churches definitely they have to evolve, if you will, to even have a chance in this modern society because they have to be applicable to modern life. As a skeptic, that might be that is a criticism I have of the holy book, in this case the Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible, is it's static. It's not. It doesn't change, and so it's like, well, says nothing about what, if I should use fossil fuels. So I'm on my own for that, and so. Uh, what sort of response do you have to that sort of complaint? It's like, well, it's just you have this static book that can't change with the times. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
The Bible and the Christian religion is all about a relationship with God through Jesus Christ. So, and in our church, I say we're really all about two things. Let's keep this fairly simple. It's about love God with all our heart and love our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, as I shared that with our church, we all said, wow, we really suck at both of those. We're not where we want to be. So, and I think how we love God, how we demonstrate that, how we live that out is changing, is different in different cultures, in different times. How we love our neighbor. I don't go over and help you farm your acreage to show you that I love you,
Yeah.
It's how do we reach out and care for people right now during COVID?
Right.
People feel, as we're coming out of this, people feel isolated. How do we care for them? How do we love them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know anybody that lives near me, or it's like I don't want to know them. It's just like, whatever. We all just have our own lives, and many places are like that. I mean, it's been a hot second since we had this sort of environment where everyone knew their neighbors, and I think we know people online that are way far away from us. I don't know, it's hard to know what the zeitgeist of society is like today.
I lived near the Amish for a while.
Oh,
I don't hold their theological views. I did a tour, so I'm not an expert on the Amish, but I did an hour tour, and they said one of their cautions about technology was it encouraged them. Technology made it so you could farm on your own, and they said, "Hey, that's detrimental. We are a community. We need to rely on each other." So I thought that was interesting. They really highlighted the community and the need to connect, and they felt like certain technology would take them away from that.
Yeah. I mean, there is something to that. I don't know. I don't have the solutions for these issues per se. Okay, so on the religious subject, there are some religious folks out there that think the age of the Earth and the age of the universe are of some absurd numbers that don't align with science, and they disagree with biological evolution. What are your stances on those issues?
I am not a scientist. I don't know. If you're asking me, do I hold to a 6-day creation 6,000 years ago? I'd say, I don't know.
You don't know if you hold to that, or
it would be difficult to defend when all I hear and read the age of the Earth. So how all that works, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because it's like Earth is about 4.54 billion years old, and the universe is about 13 some odd billion years old. And
so if there was somebody sitting here and they said if the universe is 13 billion years old, and somebody else said no, it's 2 billion years old, I wouldn't be able to participate in that conversation. I don't know.
Okay. And
it doesn't affect my relationship with God, doesn't affect me connecting with others, and it doesn't affect how I approach the Bible.
It's not something you talk about. Okay. And then biological evolution also would be in the same category of just not something you comment on or know.
No.
Okay.
Sorry. I hope
Fair
I'm not
enough.
boring. I told you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, it's better to be silent than
ignorant.
Something like that. I don't know. What is that? Open your mouth and remove all doubt. It's like, well, That's not going to happen. I'm going to remove all doubt all the time. Okay, so what about more social issues? Because this is a concern for many of my skeptical atheist friends, is that Christians sometimes will vote based on their belief rather than based on good analysis of the issues at hand.
Yeah.
Is that something that you dived into or poked your toe into at all, or is that something you're
I
not?
have. You didn't watch all 111 of my
No,
videos.
yeah, I'm sorry. I watched once.
I'm hurt. Everybody, we vote our values, we vote our priorities. So we bring those priorities, our assessment. How do we, if this is for people in the US, I hope we all care about our country. How do we make it better? We're going to approach it differently.
Yeah.
How we deal with the issues, we think differently. That doesn't make the other person or the other side horrible. People vote their values. As a Christian, I have values attached to that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to vote those. That doesn't mean when I vote my values that I want a theocracy.
Yeah. There are some that do, and that's kind of a scary thing because
I've never met one.
Yeah. I've only heard about them. Yeah.
So I think it's kind of a false challenge. Well, they're trying to make this a theocracy. No, we're voting our values just like everybody else on the planet.
Yeah, there's a few noisy people that are attempting to do that, and it's like they don't know what it is that they are asking for. They really don't, because they're rather ignorant, because they think that it's going to be their version of whatever, and it's like it's going to be the version you don't want. That's what the answer is. It's like the moment that the state has that power, the version that they go with is going to be nothing like the one that you want. You're going to have no say in it. You're going to, it's like, look how much the government already screws up stuff. You really want them in charge of religion? No. Yeah. And they so it's really weird. The few that are out there that do that, some Muslims attempting to do that with getting Sharia law, and some Christians trying to do that with nationalistic Christianity, as they call it, or something of that nature.
I think Jesus spoke to that when they tried to trap him. The Pharisees said, here's this coin. He says, are we supposed to pay taxes? What are we supposed to do? What was the initial comment?
I don't know. It's render under Caesar's what is Caesar's. I remember that part. Yeah.
I'm not very smart, but I'm a really nice guy. So I can't remember the whole context. So here's this coin. It says, do we pay taxes? He says, yeah, render unto Caesar's what Caesar's and what is God's. Well, Caesar's face was stamped on the coin. He was saying, hey, we believe as Christians that we're created in God's image. He's saying, my image is stamped on you. So you are to serve me. So honor the government, but as a follower of Jesus, serve me.
So let me ask this a very complicated question, and you might not have the answer, but what do you think God is? What is it? How, because I have my thoughts on it, but I want to know what your thoughts are. What is God? How does it work mechanically? Like, what is it made out of, or what's its substance? I mean, we could talk about ourselves and say, well, I'm made up of cells and atoms and molecules and energy and all this. So what could be said about God in that way, if anything?
Yeah, I'd probably approach it more like I would explain it to a 5-year-old, but maybe that's how my brain works. If you remember that episode in The Office where he's wrestling with a budget and he said, can you explain it like you would to a 5-year-old? I think God is personable. So when we talk about God being love, that doesn't mean every time we love pizza or love a dog or love a spouse, that's God. But there is this person that we can have a relationship with. So you're asking, what is the essence of God? Well, he's not natural. So then he would be super or supra. I don't know the difference between those terms, but outside of that, if we believe, however the universe began, God was there before all that. So I think he's spirit, and I can't give a good technical definition of that, but um, whatever essence that is, he's the God who loves and cares for us and created this, made this creation and played a role in the creation and made us in his image. And our response should be to love him.
Spirit, of course, and soul both are also abstract. They're somewhat not. I don't know if it's appropriate to say they're not made of anything other than themselves, or if there's a tautology there, or there seems to be, you get kind of abstract with those sort of objects, and well, I mean that it's unknown. It's not told about in the Bible. We're not, it's not. And so anything you'd say would be hypothetical, but I'm just, it's kind of a curious thing for me. It's like, well, why aren't we told? We're not even told how humans operate. We had to figure that out for ourselves. I don't really, get that.
Yeah. And it's not that the Bible isn't a science book. It's not going to go and who it was written to. It was written thousands of years ago. So they didn't think in our Western way of how we perceive things. So, it's not meant to explain those things to that degree. I think God is knowable, and I would hold that I can have this relationship. I can know, but I only know a little bit of this great, big, awesome God. Can I know and learn more? I would think, yeah, I could probably learn a little bit more, but there's some things like that, how we define or describe his essence. I don't know.
And then when you say relationship, I want to make sure that we're both on the same page with that, because natural language is can be an issue at times. You and I right now are having a verbal exchange, so we have a tentative relationship, and to a degree, we have a goal in mind of conveying information to each other and whoever might watch this video in the future or what have you. I can hear you, I can see you, I can detect you on those levels. That to me seems to be necessary to have in any relationship. So with this entity, God, I could say the word God, or I can say Yahweh or Jehovah or some other name, and I say, hey, I don't know where to even look, because there's nothing to look at, perhaps, or I can even say it in my head and with the hope that it can read my mind. But I hear nothing back. I get no contact back. So already right there, that seems to be not what I would consider a relationship. So what does the word relationship mean in this way? And what am I missing here?
Yeah, I'll share some things, but just had a wonderful argument with Christian friends who say, well, I don't have a relationship with God because it looks so different, kind of sharing those pieces of a relationship, seeing, hearing, connecting. When I say that, I say I would say no. And I would say, just like I know a lot of things, people press me, well, can you define this with 100% accuracy and clarity and assurance? And I said that's really not how we live our lives. We live our lives with a general idea where we press forward with the knowledge we have. So therefore, I am aware of there's a God who loves me and cares for me. How do I know that? We have the Bible. The Bible is a story of God creating mankind to follow him, mankind failing, and God not dictating or stopping all bad things or saying, here's what you do. He just says to love me. And he sent his son, another discussion, but we believe he sent his son who paid this incredible penalty because we rebelled against him. This God, this relationship, this God is still pursuing me. When I ignore him, when I become selfish and not serving God, he's still pursuing me. For people who aren't following him or rejecting his message, he is still pursuing us. So I think the best way to describe that is a relationship. How does he communicate with us today? I think through his word. I think we can be aware of it somewhat through creation and through other people. But I think that my greatest understanding comes from the Bible, how it talks about God. So I think that's how God talks, is through his word, much to gather there. And I respond to him through a heart of love. I have a relationship with my mom. She's 88 years old. She's not right here. She just moved far away. I still have that relationship with my mom. Now it's better when I'm talking with her, but I'm not face to face with her, but there's still that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, again, I guess it's just my view of that particular word where, I do have a person where I will email them and they will not respond. So I'm like, well, this is not a relationship. This is a one-sided deal. I'm giving everything and getting nothing, and this is this is some cost. The only reason why I'm doing it is because I think maybe this time we'll get something, and I never do. So I guess I'm a little insane for even attempting. But and then the same way, I can toss out thoughts, words, prayers, whatever you would call them, and when I get no response, no any detectable signal of any sort, then I would think it's fair for me to conclude, well, if there is a thing that can hear my voice right now that is not just me, that thing doesn't care enough to have a conversation. So if that's going to be the way, I'm not interested in that, whatever that is. Is that a fair sort of
yeah, and I
place
think
to
it's
be at?
that struggle with that term relationship, so I might struggle with things in life. I woke up the other morning thinking of a bunch of horrible things I'd done years ago, and I don't know why. Why did I have those thoughts? And then I open God's word and remember he talks about, man, I love you. I care about you. You are, because of Jesus Christ, you are forgiven. We can have that direct, and I have access to this perfect God, even though I am imperfect. That's just amazing to me. So is that a different relationship than relationship with the people? Absolutely. So is there a better term? Maybe.
Possibly, yeah. Okay, well, going to the Bible, obviously this was written by a vast amount of people over time. And of course, the typical Christian wouldn't, and I don't think you would, know when, where, and how it was any particular thing. It's like where right now, somewhere in the world is kept the oldest copy of Genesis that we have. Okay, who found that? Where did they find it? How did they find it? The questions like that I would think, because Christians tell me the Bible is the most important book in the world. It's like, well, wouldn't you know everything there is to know about that? You don't know that. So why not? Why you're not treating it like it's the most important book in the world because there's so much you don't know about it. Is that a fair objection to make, or do you think it's kind of unfair? It's like, well, yes, it's important, but I'm not going to know everything. I mean, so we go, well,
yeah, I think there's some pieces of that. It's good to know, how do we know it's true? How do we prove history? There are more manuscripts, of the New Testament written almost 2,000 years ago than anything else written at that time. But I think when we call it a holy Bible, but it's not holy. I can put it on the floor. I can throw it away if it gets dirty. It's not this. It's what's in the book. And the book is this talk about a God who loves me and is pursuing me, even when I'm selfish, even if I say, screw you, God, I want to do it my way. So I think that's the part that's important. Are there things in the Bible I don't understand? Absolutely. Are there things in the Bible I don't remember? Absolutely. So is it a great book? Yeah. But the point is to point me to God, not to Not that that book is. I'm not saying that, right? But I think you can kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I guess the criticisms, because there's plenty of them of this. Like I said, it's written by a bunch of people, pretty much anonymous authors at this point. I think would be fair to say. Um, codified, brought together by, well, what group? Some group did it at some point, decided what was or wasn't canon, and of course, there's a debate between the Catholics and the Protestants about that, and amongst Protestants, and there seems to be missing parts of the Bible that are referred to, but we just don't have them. We haven't found them, perhaps never will. But ultimately, a person wrote this, so I could write, and I have written two, or well, maybe it wasn't me, maybe it was actually God, written The Lobsterist, which is my version of a Bible. And I'm like, well, here, because people will come on my channel and say, well, the Bible says, and I'll be like, well, The Lobsterist says something else. Have you read that? No, they haven't read it. So I'm like, well, you don't know what I believe. Why should I listen to what you believe? It's like, well, how when they're like, well, why would I bother to read that? And I'm like, good, exactly. You're gonna get my point. Is that why would I bother to read any book out there, regardless of what it claims, unless those claims are something that can be shown to be demonstrably true? Because every religion has some sacred writing, some sacred teaching, some holy book or books, and they'll make the same claim. And I just go, okay, well, that's nice. I've done it too. How do I know that yours is true? So what would be your thoughts on that?
I'm a Christian because I believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and I've done research. I'm not all researched up. I'm not ready to respond with all this stuff, but
right.
I don't think. I think the best answer by far is that Jesus was the Son of God and that he rose from the dead. So a lot of times I'm talking with people and they say, well, was Jesus a real person? And I think when I responded to you, somebody else was saying, well, I don't think there was a historical Jesus. Yeah. Well, that's a different discussion. But all I can do is look up, and I found an atheist historian that said, hey, any historian out there of any salt is going to say there was a Jesus, an historical figure. I'm not a historian. I could spend hours and hours in looking, but I kind of say, okay, here's a guy who's not arguing, not benefiting from that, saying that Jesus is a historical person. So you look at the other historians who wrote at that time, some anti-Christian, some Jewish, all talking about this and talking about his followers. So I think there's a point where we look in and say, okay, there was a Jesus. Then how do we know about him? Then we look at like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So they're attesting to this Jesus. Later on, some of those authors and some of the disciples get persecuted, and they still hold to this. What really fascinating, the greatest thing in Christianity is the resurrection of Jesus, right? The Bible says if Jesus didn't rise again, then this is false. You are wasting your time following this. So by our own writings, we're saying we need to really look at this. And the Gospels look at the resurrection differently. People have looked and said, well, one thing says there's two men, another thing there's a woman, and there's this and that. If they were trying to fake it, they would have corroborated on that and got all these right. I think that shows that we're different people looking at an event. Can they all fit together? Yeah, I think they can. But I think that says, hey, so then can we trust this book? Can we trust the New Testament? I would argue through my research, yes, we can. Other people are going to look at it and say, no, I can't.
I
can only share what I see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of criticism of all that. Bart Ehrman comes to mind as being the one that perhaps said that there was a historical Jesus. But if you asked him further and say, well, did he do the things that in the Bible? He would say no.
Right.
Because he can't, the magical, mystical, supernatural events, the miracles, though, that's not, we can't, that's something that when we look at history and we find those things mentioned, We codify that as mythology because we in this world, as far as I know, although some people have said that we do, we have no demonstratable thing that we can say, here is a miracle, here's how you detect it, here's how you know it's a miracle. So now, knowing that that's a thing, we can go to the past and go, okay, that's really happened, because lots of ancient texts have miraculous claims in them. So we can't verify those. We've never seen anything like that in today's day and age, at least under controlled conditions, at any
Yeah,
rate, or
can't
even
test
at
it.
all.
So that's what I think the biggie, and you're right, you're 100% correct. We can't go back. How do we test those kind of things?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the resurrection of Christ is different. Have you read the book, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel?
Yeah, it's an absolute travesty. And
Is
he's
it?
a con. Yeah, he's a con man.
Ah,
You shouldn't spend 2 seconds on that guy.
interesting. I have looked at it. The movie was made, but
Yeah, I saw the movie too. He's an utter joke.
his story was really wrestling with the resurrection.
Yeah, yeah, he's a complete con man.
We can't really look at.
Yeah, his story is completely fabricated. He's a con man.
I don't make those attacks of
I do.
most people. So
I wouldn't unless I'd done proper research. He's
but
an absolute utter
what
con
would he
man.
have to gain from that?
Money, fame.
Yeah, but I don't think when he wrote the book that he would have really been thinking, hey, if you ever looked the books and
if he ever was a journalist, he used none of the skills in that book. Because proper journalism wouldn't do what he did. He cherry picked things. He picked people to interview that he wanted to. He cherry picked the interviews with the atheists. He selected what he wanted and discarded the rest. It's absolutely complete. He went in with a conclusion that he wanted to find. He found this conclusion. It's completely circular, utter nonsense. He's a con man. He should know better. He apparently doesn't. He says he's an investigative journalist. I see no hint of that in his book or the movie, not even a little. I've seen investigative journalism. It's far different than what he's doing in that book. What he's doing in that book is, I have a conclusion. I'm going to pretend like I don't have that conclusion, and I'm going to go around asking people and cherry pick the things said until I get to my conclusion, and then conclude, oh, well, I was right all along. Hallelujah. No, he's a con man. No, I have no respect for that guy or his work. And none of his work is demonstrably demonstratable. And none of it was actual journalism, because if you ask people that you know are going to give you the answer they want, well, of course they're going to give you the answer that you want. And then if you ask atheists, but then you only cherry pick what you want said, and you leave the rest of the conversation out, which he did, which we can prove that he did, at least in the movie, then obviously you're going to get the conclusion that you want. That is beyond scummy. He did not include the entire interview with many atheists that he had, and others have done this too. So I have no respect for him as a person. But beyond that, because the person doesn't matter, his argument sucks. So yeah, it doesn't impress me at all. Now, if you want somebody that might be a little bit impressive as far as research into Jesus, well, they're not going to agree that Jesus, you're going to go, I'd say Richard Carrier and Bert Ehrman both have done pretty darn good research, and I think Richard has some pretty dang good points to consider. For you don't even need Jesus to exist to make the story happen. And I kind of agree. I kind of agree with that. It's like, I don't know whether Jesus existed or not as a person. If he did, he's nothing like what's in the Bible anyways, so it doesn't matter. Because the events are written to make Jesus do certain things that he needs to do for the authors to think, for the authors to get Jesus where he needs to be. Of course you have the language of the Bible is written from an all-seeing narrative anyways. You have Jesus go alone in the desert and he gets tempted. Well, how does anybody know that happened? And people will say, well, Jesus told his followers. It didn't say that he told his followers. So how do you know that? Why would Jesus brag about being tempted? That just, but anyways, as far as Lee Strobel, yeah, not a very good, compelling case to make. So, and most atheists and skeptics out there are going to laugh at Strobel. He's an utter joke. So, not impressed. Sorry, just telling you how it is. Yeah, no, gotta like, what do I do with all that? That was a lot I said. I'm sorry, but I was a little bit passionate about that. Yeah, because I like logic and I like robust argumentation and valid and sound arguments. And I think sadly some people go out and they say, well, some people go out and say, I'm a doctor. So because I was a doctor, I can go and have this prestige. Like John Lennox does this. I'm a mathematician. He hasn't done mathematician stuff in years, but he was a mathematician. So he uses that to kind of write his own cattails and degree and say, oh, now I'm doing talks on Christianity. And it's like, yeah, you're doing the same apologetic stuff I've seen 100 different times. It's just you got a little bit famous because you happen to be a mathematician at some point. So what? It's overall not impressive when people use their own backing to prop themselves up. I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm a that. It's like, well, if you were still practicing, that might be interesting, but in many cases they aren't. And usually when they are, it's underwhelming what they have to contribute. Okay, I'm a dumb face. Don't expect much from me. B.S. Lewis, what? Okay. Anyway, long thing. Okay, so back to what were we hammering at? Lee Strobel? No, we're done with that. Annihilated that. What else you got? Because that didn't impress me, and I think you were quite taken aback by all that I said there. So,
remind me, what was the question?
What was the question?
A long time ago.
Yeah. Well, what how do we know? Well, I guess how do we know? Why? What about this supposed resurrection? Why is that supposed to? I have to go digging to find out if this ever happened, and so that's an uphill battle. You have to convince me that there's a reason for me to go look into it. Then I have to go look into it. Then I have to be able to verify it. Why would God make it so convoluted?
Well, I assume you're saying convoluted because it was 2,000 years ago. The resurrection.
Well, I mean, I have to do all these things to even prove that happened, and I have to be aware that it supposedly happened. So, I mean, there's a lot of uphill battle going on into that. I mean, somebody can come up and say, "Hey, Jesus came back from the dead." Who? When did this happen? Oh, well, a long time ago. It's in this book. How do I know the book is true? Well, you have to do all these things to find out that the book is true. Why? I'm not going to do that. I've got too many things, to do it. It just seems like this very much uphill climb to even, to get to the point where I can find out if it was true, to find out that it was true, because there's these obstacles in the way. And unlike you and I, where I can just talk to you and say hi and see that you're a thing to say hi to, all the gods that are out there, no matter their names, no matter how much I call upon them, are silent. So what am I supposed to make of that? How and all these god claims out there all have books. And they all can say the same thing of, well, if you look at the history enough, you'll find out it's true. And I'm like, I just don't have the time or energy. That's a burden on you to prove to me, not for me to go look for. Why? So then my question becomes, why would God set up the system to make it so inaccessible? Because I can't verify God externally, personally. And then I can't verify God through these texts either. So why did God do that? It doesn't make I don't get that. Although I don't get it, that could still be true, but I just need an explanation.
Yeah, I think probably the bigger picture, and maybe the reason I pursued it, one was because I felt like I was life had a purpose. There's something bigger out there. What, things aren't the way they ought to be. Why did I get this? It's the old C.S. Lewis. Where did we get this idea of ought to? Why do we long for things to be right, for people to treat each other right? And I think there's a longing for, why am I here? And your question, why should I even look? I think that's why. Why do people get depressed? Why do people take their own life? They're aching, they're longing for something more, for a purpose in life, and for love, or whatever those things are that we can't test in a test tube. But they're things that keep us going as people. And I would say it's because there's some of that image of God in us that makes us long for what is right and good, and a connection with our maker.
Well,
But I think you're right in one point is, yeah, I can't convince somebody. I'm not going to sit there and argue point for point. And that was kind of the point of my video, was that connect with people, ask them what makes them tick. And if they're interested, they'll ask you. But
yeah.
we're not going to sit there and pound, Christianity into somebody.
Yeah. Well, you said you looked into the matter a little bit, and that's something I would want you to flesh out. What was your methodology? What did you look at? What did you find? How did you verify it? And then I'd have deeper questions like, well, you have this event that we've never before seen ever demonstrably demonstrated, somebody coming back from the dead. And in this case, we know that because we have modern examples of people that were dead that came back. And it's like, well, yeah, but they weren't like really dead. Like Jesus was really dead. Like he had his liquids leaking out. He was poked in the side with a spear.
Yeah.
He was pretty dead. So okay, so we don't have an example of somebody that injured coming back to life. And if we did, okay, that's something. Now we've got, at least we know that that's plausible, and it's like, well, there's ways we could formulate it to be plausible with, if you said, well, maybe he was a mutant like Wolverine. Of course, you're going off into kind of sci-fi territory there, and say he had regenerative power. It's like, okay, so that's how it worked. Okay, great. But still came back from that dead space. All right, fine. We know that's possible now. And we go, okay, it's possible. Then we go back to the story. Go, okay, well, here's an example of that in history. Did this happen in the same way that we know today? We don't know, but at least we know it's plausible. But we don't even have that example. So we go, well, I've never seen anyone, I've never seen anyone come back from that. I've never seen these things, and not only that, nobody has ever seen these things. So how can I believe that happened then? It's this huge, well, it's a leap of faith. And for me, I can't, I don't have room for faith because I only want fact. I don't need faith. I have facts, and if I have the fact, then I don't need the faith, because it's like I'll know that it's true. It's like I know there's a light here because it's there. I can verify it. So, and I know these are not questions that you have any particular answer to. It's just the sort of the frustration, if you will, the bubbling up of having dealing with these sort of things that I the sort of passion that you expressed of telling people, hey, God's a thing. I had that myself. I did a whole channel called Infinite Hope for many years doing that same sort of thing. When I deconverted, it's just that passion flipped, and it's like, hey, there's other ways to think about things, and it's not that there's no God, but if there is a God, it's not like any of the gods that we're told about. It's a silent God that doesn't seem to care about us, or at least if it does, it's undetectable. And so it's like, well, okay, maybe it exists, but I don't see why I should, be interesting to know, but I don't care. It's a sort of deistic God that just kind of sits back and watches us struggle trying to figure things out for whatever reason. But maybe I'm just missing something, and that's why I engage in these conversations. It's like, what did I miss? Maybe I looked at it the wrong way, or maybe I'm approaching it the wrong way. So and I don't expect any one person out there maybe to have that perfect argument, although that'd be great. It's not up to you. It's up to that entity. If it really cares about me, it hasn't demonstrated that. And for many of my atheist friends and fellows out there, we're like, if we could just see God and talk to it, then we could know what it's like. And we can't do that. So of course I don't believe in it. And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, it's like, what choice do I have? And so that's not a you thing to fix, but it is sort of like within your belief system, you have certain ideas that address that, and that's where that's the apologetics, is to kind of try to say, well, here's why that's the way it is, or whatever. But certainly, I think you can understand the frustration there.
And I assume you've read C.S. Lewis' Mere Christianity. I think the first 5 chapters, I think he does a really good job of thinking through this ought and why are we here, and this longing. You raise a good point. That Christianity is based on an historical event, the resurrection of Christ. How do we prove history 2,000 years ago? It's really difficult.
Yeah. So it's not even history. It's an event that we've it's an event that is not one that we could ever know is even possible, because we have no example of it. That's the miracle event. Turning water to wine, walking on water, any of the feats would do. I mean, coming back from the dead, okay, you've already turned water into wine without exploding the surrounding environment. So I'm already impressed, because in order to turn water into wine, you have to affect the molecular structure. And you're talking taking apart atoms, that's going to cause an explosion of the atomic bomb. And then you're talking about fusion, where you're introducing new molecules. So to do all that without causing any heat, any explosion, well, you've done something no human can do. That's amazing on its own. The turning water to wine, you've sold me. That's an amazing miracle, but I have no example of it. So I don't know that it can actually happen. And so until somebody can demonstrably demonstrate a miracle, then I can't believe that it's even possible in the first place. And I have no choice but to doubt, because there's plenty of other miracle events that people talk about, not just in ancient times, but modern times. There's this reality TV show I started watching where the gal's like, I'm a medium and I talk to spirits. I'm like, no, you don't. You're a con artist. You don't speak to. I know what's inside of people, and I can tell when their ovary is had this. I saw this person. I knew they had a thing on their ovary. I'm like, no, you didn't. That didn't really happen. You're lying. And I'm like yelling at the thing, because she thought, and I'm like, okay, you're playing this game where you're supposed to find out who the liars are. Use your mystical powers on that. I haven't seen her do that yet. Yeah. So I don't think she's going to make it far, because these are not real powers. Nobody has those abilities. They're not real. So for the miracle stuff, where's the evidence for any of that today? Why don't we have anything? Do we have anything?
I don't think so. I don't see it. But, if you believe in a great big God who was involved in the formation of the earth and the creation of the natural laws, then it's not too hard to believe that God can step outside of those natural laws that he created.
Yeah, but then that's kind of like, well, why would you believe in that?
Yeah, but I'm just saying from my point of view.
Yeah. It's all, it's kind of, you're kind of going in circles. So I guess I go a little bit into your history. We have enough time. How were you introduced to these beliefs? Were you raised in these beliefs, or did you come to them later in life?
I was raised in a Christian religion, going to church. I came to time in my life where I started to date a girl of another religion. And you say, why would you date somebody of another religion? Well, it's pretty easy. She was cute and she liked me.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So that really made me wrestle with what's the difference. Am I a Christian just because I was raised in it? And looking at all the religions, and I think you and I would really agree on this. One of the biggest differences of all the religions is how they view Jesus. Only one religion views Jesus as the Son of God who rose from the dead. The others view him quite differently. So I came through my own research, probably approached it differently than you. I thought, man, I just can't come with a better explanation of this Jesus and the resurrection than what the Bible tells me. And there's books written about, how his disciples who followed him, how they responded. It just seems to make the most sense. And then it tied in with my longing for purpose in life, and that there is a God, there's something bigger than me. There's a God that cares for me and isn't just Jesus rose and then he's gone. No, I think I connect through reading his words to me that they still apply to today. And how do I love him? How do I love others? How do I reach out to those who are hurting around me because they were created in God's image? That's what keeps me going. I'm a commercial pilot. I got my license years ago. I never flew for a commercial airline. I went off to the jungles of New Guinea and flew and made $500 a month because I cared about people. I felt like they were created in the image of God. They needed to hear the story of Jesus. I didn't force it on them. I just made friends and talked, and they had their own religion, and some of them connected.
I happen to know a pilot, and he would want. I'm sure he would love to interrogate you, if you will. He'll be much harder talk than I am, if you can believe it. We'll see if we can set that up. That would be extremely interesting to see what went happened there, because there'd be a connection you guys have on the pilot stuff, and then you'd be like, okay, great, we all agree on the pilot stuff. Now it's time to grill you, and you would, and you'd be. It would be interesting to hear. Is the Earth round? Well, it's an oblo. Oh yeah, is the Earth an obloid spheroid? Somebody in chat, B.S. Lewis in chat, wanted to know if you agree with the shape of the Earth being an obloid spheroid.
Does that mean round?
Yes, basically. It's an
I think for thousands of years they looked and seen eclipses.
Yeah.
And you can see the round shape of the Earth on the moon.
Yeah.
I don't think that's been any surprise to anybody for a long time.
There's a few flat earthers out there that we deal with. Well,
I've never met one, but maybe
they're out there. They're fun. Basically, for them, it boils down to, for many of them, it boils down to either some sort of bizarre conspiracy theory, but the core of it many times is because they think that that's how the Bible describes the world. And so they think, well, that's God's word, and so God can't be wrong, and so it described it as flat, so it can't be a sphere because of that. They're wrong, but that's what they believe. And goodness knows, how they got there or why they keep believing it. I mean, many of them have done tests and they've been proven wrong, and they'll stand there and be like, well, we did the test wrong. And it's like, you did the test. What? They'll refuse to acknowledge that they could be wrong.
It's hard for me to get past the eclipse argument.
Yeah.
People have been studying the stars for thousands of years, so
I don't know. They got something for everything. Okay, so did the history a little bit, and then of course you do your videos are kind of talking, if you will, to Christians, kind of talking to other religions, and I suppose not atheists as well. Is that the goal, is to just get your ideas out there, or is it to try to
my goal is to simplify Christianity. Sometimes people want to make it complex. and it's about loving God and loving others.
Mm.
And so that's my hope, to point people to Jesus and point people to sacrificially serve others. And I define love as a self-sacrifice. You know, how do we reach out and care for others? Even those who disagree with us, even those who call us names, you know, you didn't call me any names. I'm just using that as an example.
Well, I could call you if you want me to. I mean, you know.
You can do it after I
Yeah. Be like, oh, that Kevin guy. He put a blue sheep on his head. Who does that? What kind of crazy person puts a blue sheep on his head and then it falls off? Why would he do that? This was a serious discussion. Anyways, I did that because, you know, they want me to be crazy. Because I'm not really crazy. They want me.
I did one with my daughter in disability in light of a good God, and she has cerebral palsy. She's in a wheelchair and very well spoken. And so if you do a search on that, I think that was a good video, just reminding people, hey, we believe that just because there's heartache and difficulty in life doesn't mean that God has left us. You know, everything's not perfect. Just because we have this connection with him.
I mean, I feel for that, and I hope that medical science will be able to address that issue rapidly and quickly. Okay, so I got one question for you, then we'll kind of let you do some shout outs if you have anything to say, or books or anything to promote you want to, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, CJ, does Kevin think that God is infallible? Infallible. My brain wanted to say inflatable, and I'm like, no, that's not inflatable God. You know, I'm God. You know, sorry. You can read the question. Yeah,
I can read the question. Is God inflatable? No, he's a spirit. Infallible. Just kidding. So this is a good question, because it really gets to the heart of what I believe. I believe that God created us to have a relationship with him, but it's a love relationship, so it's not forced on us. So he could have created a bunch of little robots and everybody walked around and say, I'll follow God, I'll obey, I'll do this. And he gave us what I would argue is a free will. We can choose to follow him. We can wrestle. Is he really there? Do I care? I think those are good questions, but I think we need to pursue that. His desire is that, in a love relationship, we're creating his image. He wants us to follow him. Is he going to force that on us? Is he going to force everybody to spend eternity with him if they choose not to? No, he wants people to respond out of a love relationship. So that means they have a choice.
Okay, I think we'll wrap it up there. Did you have anything have you written any books, or you have a website, or you have anything that you want to promote other than your YouTube channel? I did ask, you didn't send me anything, but if you do, I can always put it on.
No, I'm a regular old Joe. I haven't done anything spectacular.
Oh well, you know.
So
you've done your father. That's pretty spectacular. So that's something.
I'm a what? What was the first?
I said you're a father, right?
I'm a father. Yeah.
So that is spectacular.
And a grandfather. I mentioned the move because I got to chase the granddaughter.
Oh man.
Yeah. I'd say as far as promoting, I think reading the first 5 chapters, and they're only 10-minute reads of Mere Christianity, is just a great, interesting read. I find C.S. Lewis's mind fascinating, and no, I don't have a little spiel. I do have a little interpretive dance, but I'm not really practiced up on it.
Hey, well, there is a challenge I've put out there about a dance, so we'll have to talk about that challenge and see if you'll do it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and energy to do this, and thank you for putting up with the skeptical grilling that I've done, and hopefully, if you want to reverse the tables on me, I'm happy to do that. Or if you want to do something more together later on, we can set that up or what have you. Or
might do a little interview with you on Rev Kev.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm happy to do that. Thank you, everybody. Go check him out, and Okay, guys, stop asking questions in the chat. We're done. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Remember, lobsters exist. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the people before I hit the button here?
Lobsters exist, and
Yes.
so does God.
Well,
you asked me, do I want to say something?
Yeah, I'm like, no, I can't end it like that. I checkmated myself. Oh, good one. All right. Thank you. Okay, goodbye. And button.